Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and this is Radical Academy. Welcome to the Science Made Easy, and this is chemistry. Okay, so I want to make it simple and quick, more especially for those who are not going to school, and I've decided to talk about chemical bonding. So, when you talk about chemical bonding, what are we simply talking about? Science or rather chemistry is one of the fundamental, building block of, the formation of compounds and everything we see in much more of general as materials. And when you're learning about chemistry, we try to even break it down further to an atomic level where we try to understand what compounds or rather elements are made up of. So in this short video, I want to talk about chemical bonding. So chemical bonding is actually, as you can see, I've already done the definition, but to make it simple and so that you can understand, chemical bonding is an attraction between atoms, ions, or molecules that enables the formation of chemical compounds. So that's the definition of chemical bonding. You might have many definitions. It's up to you to choose the one you feel comfortable with. So science is about, critical thinking, about also reasoning to your definition of a statement, or rather a term. So there are a lot of things that you need to understand about chemistry and much more of chemical bonding. So when you talk about chemical bonding, we would want to know how many types of bonding do we have, and then also how do these what are some of the mechanisms actually that occurs when the atoms, ions, and molecules still combine to form compounds. So as you can see, we've got types of bonding. Okay, though the types of bonding are not limited to this. Reason being that I've restricted this video only to senior level, but much more of simplicity other than complexity. Okay, so the first type of chemical bonding is ionic bonding, also known as electrovalent bonding. We also have covalent bonding. We also have a metallic bonding. Okay, so when you are in grade 10, 11, and 12, this is very cardinal for you, because once you get to know how to determine the type of bonding that exists in a different type of substances, compound, whatsoever that it is, you'll be able to, you start or rather begin to understand what science is about, and much more of chemical bonding in chemistry. So for today in this video, I want to keep it simple. I'll talk about ionic bonding, and then the next will be covalent bonding, and as well as metallic bonding. So let's get started with ionic bonding. Okay, so now as you can see, under ionic bonding, we've got I've illustrated some examples down here. So as you can see, in this type of bonding, only metals and non-metals are involved. Okay, so this is what you just need to know, that metals and non-metals are involved. Now, what are some of the examples that we can give under ionic bonding? Now, to make this even simple, I'll get one of the simplest elements from the periodic table. And of course, this video is not about the periodic table. I'm assuming that you already know a periodic table, okay? And how to get some of the information from the periodic table. So like the proton number, the mass number, the neutron number. I'm assuming that you know that. Otherwise, if you don't know anything about the periodic table, please ensure that you start the periodic table and know some of the elements from the periodic table, and then come back to this video. Okay, so in this type of bonding, only metals and non-metals are involved. So to understand this, think of an element that is a metal and a non-metal. So you can see I've given an example. I've chosen a metal to be sodium and also non-metal to be chlorine. So what this means is that the type of bonding that exists between sodium and chlorine is ionic bonding. So the way you can answer or rather understand this question is that you need only to have a metal as well as a non-metal. And just once you have that, then the type of bonding between the two elements to form a compound, which is going to be sodium chloride. So this type of bonding is going to be ionic bonding. So for your own information, ensure that you understand the meaning of ionic bonding. So what you even mean is that after the compound is formed, the building block of this compound, or rather a compound sodium chloride, will no longer be atoms, but it will be ions. Okay, so we'll talk more about ions in the upcoming videos. But for this one, let's just stick to ionic bonding as well as other types of compound. Okay, so let's move further now. Okay, so as you can see, the example in this video, we've got before we do any bonding, you have to make sure that you configure the sodium, which has got 11 protons. When you configure that, you have 2,8, 1, and just make sure that when you add the numbers, when you sum the numbers 281, we should get back to 11. As well as also we've got chlorine, which is 17 as its proton number, and then when you configure that, make sure that the first number should be 8, the second number is always the first number stored in chlorine should be 2, the second number should be 8, then the last number is 7 to make it 17. Okay, so you can see that what I've done, 2,8, 1, 2,8, 7, this is called electronic configuration of atoms. Yeah. So before you start answering the question concerning bonding, you have to make sure and ensure that you do some electronic configuration, and that would help you to understand what is happening in terms of the losing of electrons and the gaining of electrons. Okay, so now, by the way, I should actually emphasize that in ionic bonding, what happens is that all metals will be losing electrons, all non-metals will be gaining electrons. Okay, so chlorine is a non-metal, so it will gain the 1 from sodium, and then the sodium is a metal, it will lose 1 electron and it will give it to chlorine. So therefore chlorine will have 2,8, 8 again. So you can see from the right hand side there that I've done also the electronic configuration for chlorine and also for sodium. So you can see that after they form a compound, the individual ions now have gained or lost electron, depending on who is losing and who is gaining. So now down below we've got the atomic representation of electrons. Okay, so you can see that I've written on the left far side there that before bonding, this is what you have just getting from electronic configuration above there, which is 2,8, 1, and then represent them in form of atomic structure. including the shells as well as the electrons in the shells, or rather the orbitals if you like. So now, on the top right farmost corner, you can see that I've put a note there which tells you to say all metals will lose electron. So the sodium has lost 1 to chlorine. All non-metals will be gaining electrons. And after that, the compound that will be formed will be called sodium chloride, as you can see down below on the left side, the right side. You can see that the compound formed is called sodium chloride, and I've also put the chemical formula. Okay, now just in conclusion, let me just draw the electronic diagrams or electronic structure after they have bonded together. And before I do that, the emphasis is that the idea behind bonding is that these elements are not stable, independent, or rather individually they are not stable. So when the elements bond, or rather the atoms, when they bond to form compounds, all they are looking for is just to become stable by sharing and losing and gaining of electrons. Okay, so let's get to the drawing of the electronic diagrams after the bonding has occurred.